On today's podcast, we are going to talk a little bit about the Bolivian bridgerweight legend, and we are also going to welcome on Beto Duran, who was at Big Punch Arena this past weekend. We are going to get his take, his experience, talk to him a little bit about club boxing in general. So definitely stay tuned. We're going to go through our normal episode, which is going to be shorter than usual, and then we are going to go right into the interview, which you do not want to miss. Welcome back to another episode of the Tim Boxeo Show. Now, this is your weekly disclaimer. This is not your average boxing podcast. And if you're looking for a discussion previewing Nonito Donaire and Nordine Bali, this is not the podcast for you. We are going to talk about the world of club boxing and everything that goes into it. We are going to discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, the confusing, everything in between. If you want to hear about a legendary bridgerweight, you are in the right spot. And if this isn't what you're here for, that's okay. There are a bunch of other boxing podcasts out there. I highly encourage you guys, continue on the search. If you need to, message Tim Boxeo and ask him, what podcast do you recommend? But if you're up for hearing about what Tim Boxeo's got to say, I think you are going to have a very fun podcast today. Let me introduce the man here today, the TC Boxing Hall of Famer, the most reliable source in all of fringe sports betting. He is a one-man champion for all the little guys in boxing, all the whoop-dad-ass promotions out there. Tim, how's it going?
Great. I love it. How are you, Angelo?
I'm doing good. It's hot here. Summer's starting early.
Yeah, it's hot and humid here too. I got to tell you, the hairs stood up on my arms when you said bridgerweight champion. If you would have added Bolivia to it, it would have probably sent me into a next level. So I'm excited to get started today.
Well, I mean, it's just the beginning. You know, we don't want to set you off too soon. Also, the history of bridgerweight is not long enough that we could start narrowing it down by country.
Yeah, that's fair. Probably only been like 3 or 4 meaningful fights, and we could use the word meaningful in air quotes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, my name's Angelo. I will be the host here. I'll be mostly asking the questions because Tim's got the stories for us. So, first story of the week is something that I think for anyone who listened to like the trailer of this podcast, you got a taste of it, and that is the legend of Saul Farah. So, Tim, please tell me there is some good news around Saul Farah.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited. Let me say it a different way. I was very excited as I was preparing the story of the week because it was Saul Farah fight week. And actually, text message with the King on Sunday, and he confirmed with me that, yes, my fight is going forward on Saturday in Bolivia. And to your point, if you listen to the trailer, there's a good little 5-minute segment in there about some of the history behind the heavyweight legend from Bolivia, Saul Farah. And then I want to say it was episode 2 that we touched on Farah again, because he made the news in the club international boxing world. So yeah, Saul Farah, the King, the Phoenix Assassin, 72 wins, 26 losses, and 3 draws. Saul has about another 10 fights that are not on BoxRec, so he's easily over 100 fights. 36 years old. I spent some time, Angelo, I didn't tell you this, I spent some time here a couple of weeks ago updating the Saul Farah Wikipedia page. so because it wasn't updated through like I think it was updated through whatever was on BoxRec. So like a 2019 loss to Christian Hammer in Germany in the first round. So I couldn't let that be, so I had to do that. So anyway, Farah was set on Saturday to face, the best I can tell, is a strength and kind of weightlifting Bolivian trainer by the name of Pedro Tabares in his pro boxing debut live on Bolivian TV through Facebook.
Wait, what? Wait, is it live on TV or is it live on Facebook?
Well, both. It would have been live on Bolivian TV, but then they stream it through Facebook too.
All right.
So Farah, nearly 100 fights. Over 100 fights, fighting Pedro, and the fight has been called off and or postponed 2 times already. And unfortunately, I did text with the king again here today, and he confirmed with me the fight is in fact off for this weekend.
So just to be clear with what you just said there, the king texted you himself.
Well, I texted him, and he answered me. So
do you refer to him as like Your Majesty, Mr. Farah? What's the nomenclature that you guys are using?
Grand Campeon. Similar to Mr. Chavez Senior, of course. So I texted Grand Campeon, and he said, "Yep, the fight is in fact off for this weekend." And the fight with Pedro is an interesting backstory because Farah, you might know or might remember, has held the heavyweight title of Bolivia for 11 years, amassed a significant amount of wins on home turf over that time, and then would travel away from Bolivia and lose and then come back and pile on more wins. And in the fall of 2020, he lost his Bolivian heavyweight title to a debutante on pay-per-view who appears to have a lot of money behind him in Bolivia in terms of advertising and sponsorships and things of that nature. So
I'm getting Mayweather Logan Paul vibes here.
Which one's Mayweather?
Saul.
Okay. I just needed to clarify. So the part of that story that is interesting to me is that when he lost that in the fall of 2020, when he lost the heavyweight title of Bolivia, Farah, being the excellent marketer that he is and the grand champion, quickly pivoted and realized that there's an opportunity to create the first ever bridgerweight title in Bolivia and the first ever bridgerweight title given out anywhere in the world. And he fought for that title and won it in December of 2020 in his hometown, a 12-round unanimous decision. Now, Farah then was set to face Tabares, who we're talking about for this weekend, on March 27th. And go back and listen to our earlier podcast. You'll see in the show notes, because that fight was called off when Farah and Tabares held a press conference the day before the fight that erupted into a full-blown fist fight. And I mean, when I say fist fight, I mean these two guys threw hands, bunch of punches landed. It all started with Farah standing up and claiming himself champion, claiming that he was disrespected, and then threw his bridgerweight belt at Tabares' head. Unfortunately missed, and then the fist fight broke out. The reason why they're holding the press conference was the fight was called off due to the fact that the commission in the town of Beni, Bolivia, said, "Now we're not going to sanction a fight for the guy with 110 wins, 110 fights versus a debutante. You guys can fight for 4 to 6 rounds, but we're not going to do a 12-round title fight." And when the best part about this whole story of the canceled press conference for me is when Farah posted the video of it, and I have it in the show notes, so you can click on the Facebook video in the show notes and watch this. It's about 3 minutes long. When he posted it on a different thread than the one in the show notes, he said, "Well, I couldn't get Tabares in the ring, so I just had to beat him up outside the ring." And for me, the legend continued to grow for the king.
So he wasn't able to fight Tabares, and the solution was, well, why don't we just fight at the press conference for real until they separate us, and then we'll just consider this a settled matter.
Well, That's what I thought. And then they rescheduled the fight for May 7th. It got
Okay.
pushed back again to this Saturday, and I don't really have any detail on why it got pushed back. I'm guessing they still had trouble with either a place to get it approved, or what have you. But it got pushed back to the 29th. And then on a video that I'll also have linked to the show notes, that in preparation for today's show, I was digging around for some more information on the fight for the weekend, and that's when I ran into the interview out of Tabaras's hometown with a video interview live on sports TV. Looked like the Bolivian Sports Center, and Farah was driving his car and talking in the interview, and he felt that, and this interview was from last Wednesday, interestingly enough. So I'm not sure why he confirmed the fight with me on Sunday of this past Sunday. I'm not sure, but nonetheless, driving his vehicle, stated, "Yep, the fight is indeed off." Farah traveled to Tabaras's hometown, where the fight was supposed to be sanctioned and held, and then said the King said he felt disrespected when the promotion really didn't give him any contacts or really any information once he hit the ground in Tabaras's hometown. He went on to say that the commission in Tabaras's town was giving them trouble about sanctioning the fight, which eventually led it to be canceled for this Saturday, and that the promoter didn't have enough money to even hold the event in the first place. And then Farah just continued to repeat that he felt disrespected. And he said, "Hey, listen, I could have held this in my own hometown and thrown the card myself and put it together in short order, but Tabaras, mandated that it be out of my hometown." So Farad did not answer me when I asked him if he would be, in fact, still fighting Tabaras going forward. But he did confirm that June 19th is the new date when he'll be back in the ring. So thankfully, we've only got about 2.5, 3 weeks, and the legend will continue to grow as the Grand Campeon goes for his second bridgerweight title defense in his home of Bolivia.
So I just have a question here. If history repeats itself, which I think probably it does, shouldn't we expect Farah to find Tabaras and try to fight him? Like
Yeah,
in
I
a
think we
bar
should.
or something?
Oh, I see.
You catch him in the local supermarket or something. Like, I think Farah's going to fight him. Just, it definitely won't be sanctioned.
I agree. These men are going to get after it. Tabaras is not a boxer, but he's not a small guy. So,
well, neither is Farah, but I mean,
yeah, fair enough.
I don't know if we want to hold him to that standard.
That's true.
Is the reason why like he keeps having these fights like moved is because like there just isn't anybody else for him to fight, since he's like 100 fights deep and probably has run through everybody at this point?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the 4 or 5 heavyweights in Bolivia, a couple of which aren't even on BoxRec. I think you told me one time or another I think there's only like 3 Bolivian heavyweights on BoxRec. Anyway, 2 of the 3 that we were talking about one day were not even on there. So yeah, he's kind of run through it all, and that's why he's digging through to pull up Tabaras to stage a contest here. Maybe we're just building up to the crescendo here later this year. We'll see.
Unfortunately, we won't. I mean, all that film you guys could have been watching on Saul Farah to analyze his the proposition of him winning against his name's Pedro, right? No, it's not Pedro. Pedro's the other guy. What's Tabaraz's first name?
Yeah, it's Pedro or Pedrito.
Wait,
or
so
yeah.
Wani Chaba was also named Pedro? All right. I'm seeing a pattern here. All right. Well, we'll have to put that off until June. Also, that's like one of the busiest weekends in boxing of the year next month on June.
June 19th. Yep.
Yeah, there are like 5 major cards that day. All right. Well, what do you have for us in terms of anything we might have missed over this past weekend?
Yeah, one really, really good fight that I just want to quickly mention. There's not a whole lot of detail to share about the fight itself. Well, the cool thing is I have a link in the show notes where you can click on and watch the fight in full. And it was a really neat fight. It was in Sonora, Mexico, off BoxRec on Saturday, a 10-round welterweight fight between Luis Jesus Vidales. And Luis is 16, 8-7, 32 years old. And I've got his BoxRec link in there for you too. He fought Jesus Emmanuel Villa, who was 3-7 and 28 years old. And his BoxRec link is there as well. Shout out to my friend Ryan Scalia, who sent me a DM as I was watching a couple other things. He's like, you got to make sure and watch this fight. So once the stuff I was watching finished up, I went and watched it. And the beauty of the fight for me was how a 10-round war could break out between two guys like this. One with, 16 wins, a veteran of almost 30 pro fights versus a guy who's 3-7 with only 10 fights. And this is just the love in general for Mexican boxing. I mean, it just goes to show you just never know what you're going to get, because this was a fantastic fight. And my major takeaway from it was Jesus Emmanuel Villa at 3-7, 28-year-old fighter. It's just, to me, one of those guys. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not going to see him, or probably would ever see him on a ShowBox card or anything of that nature. But you do see him do things in the ring where I'm like, gosh, if this guy just had, an earlier start, or, I don't know much about him. His BoxRec, when you look through it, it didn't really reek of someone that, is fighting guys that were going on to bigger and better things. He was just taking fights when he could. A bunch of guys, only fought a couple more fights after they fought him. And he just did a lot of really good things in the ring for a guy of his caliber. And these guys just let their hands go, for 10 rounds. Not a lot of defense. Both of them fought their asses off. And it was just a good scrap, really highly entertaining club fight. And if you have a few minutes to watch it this week, I think you'd really enjoy it.
All right. I think I actually watched a little bit of this. I think I had seen you'd posted the full fight, so I hit play on it. Took a couple of looks through the rounds. It looked to me exactly like you described it. There was action, and most of it was not defense.
Yeah, and they had a crowd that was fired up in Mexico, and there were some good cards this weekend all around the globe with fans that were really pretty into it. It's great to have that back. So, yeah,
I
it's
don't
a
know how
good fight,
much
man.
basketball you watch, but if you watch any of the NBA playoffs games this weekend, oh boy, these crowds are they're basically back at full force. And I imagine that's gonna permeate through the world of boxing very, very soon. All right, well, can you tell us, and this is always just the best part, is when you look through BoxRec and you just see a name where it's like that, the meme for Jumanji, where you're like, what year is this?
I have one of those guys this week, and to my knowledge, and I haven't scoured, boxing Twitter or Facebook or what have you, but I haven't seen anyone mention this guy. But I almost fell out of my chair when I saw it. So Saturday in Friday. Friday in College Station, Texas, is a UFC Fight Pass card at Texas A&M going down. And believe it or not, in the heavyweight division, and this surprised me for two reasons. One, because of who it is. It's Dominic, the Southern Disaster Gwynn, 38, 13-1. That was one thing that made me fall out of my chair when I saw it. The other thing that made me fall out of my chair was he's basically hasn't stopped fighting. That was, when I clicked on his BoxRec, he's 46 years old. And to my surprise, now he hasn't fought since 2019 in November, but he's basically stayed busy minus, a year layoff here and there. This recent layoff, obviously with COVID and everything, with being the longest. But I'm just shocked that the guy's still fighting, and they're bringing him in to fight a Mexican heavyweight, which I thought a name would at least ring a bell when I saw him, but Isaac Munoz Gutierrez, who is 28, but turned pro in 2011. So this guy's been around forever too. Just a really odd fight to land on this UFC Fight Pass card on Friday night.
Our friend Isaac Munoz Gutierrez decided to take 5 years off after the first year of being a pro. Maybe he was like, I don't know if I like this or not. Interestingly enough, I remember, let's see, around 2010, Dominic had gotten a couple of fights against rising prospects. One specifically that I recall was Kubrat Pulev. And I remember looking at BoxRec thinking, damn, why are they still using this guy? Like, we know what we're getting with Dominic Gwynn. How is he still out here getting these fights? And, well, it's more than 10 years later. And at this point, I just respect the grind. Did we say that Dominic Gwynn in his 13 losses has never been stopped?
Oh, good eye. No, we did not say that.
He's been in the ring with Junior Fa, Huey Fury, Tomas Adamek, who is a great, well, I don't know about great, if great is the right word I want to use here. Very good fighter.
Very, very good.
Yep. But very entertaining fighter as well. Amir Mansour, Kubrat Pulev. I mean, he's been in there with some names. Eddie Chambers, Tony Thompson, James Toney, and none of these guys could really put a dent in him. Man, I can't believe this guy's still fighting. I mean, what I really want to know is get a sense of it. I would love if BoxRec would allow us to search and filter to just see who are the oldest legitimately active fighters that are still out there.
Yes, that and it happens more in the heavyweight division, and we both know of a couple over 50. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but it happens. It's a good exercise in BoxRec if you have the time. You know what's cool about Gwynn too is, I mean, he started off 24-0, and along the way, just before he had his first loss against Monty Two Guns Barrett in 2004, which happened when he was 24-0. A couple fights prior to that, he actually stopped Michael Grant in the 7th round back in 2003. Now, Grant had just lost to Lennox Lewis and then followed it up with a loss to, I believe it was Jameel Big Time McCline, if I'm not mistaken. And then, Grant was building himself back up and had, put a string together, 6 to 8 fights. And it was still the thought that, hey, losing to Lennox Lewis is no big deal. And coming off that, it's explainable to lose to McCline. And that around that time when Dominic Gwynn knocked out Michael Grant, that was a pretty big win for him. And then he put a couple more together. It's like, gosh, this guy might have something. And then he lost to Two Guns, and the wheels kind of came off after that. And it's just been all win-loss all the way down the road. But good point, man. Very durable guy. Bringing him in to go rounds with the Mexican heavyweight, I guess, who must be signed on the A side. But anyway, that's the old guard still fighting this weekend.
All right, and what do we have coming up that maybe features people like below the age of 40?
Well, I'm super excited.
No guarantees, by the way.
No guarantees. No guarantees. There's a ton of stuff going on this weekend that I'm really excited about. So I'm going to go a little quicker, rapid fire on this stuff, because we have a very special guest coming up here after this segment. So let me just touch on two with just a little more flavor here, and then I'll go rapid fire at the end. But 2 events in Australia this week. Tomorrow, we're taping this on Tuesday, so Wednesday morning in the United States. Australia remains my pole position. I mean, for 2021, up and down the board, they've delivered really good boxing shows. And Wednesday morning, we have Australian heavyweight champion and Olympian, Justice Hooney, 3-0. And it's really what amounts to kind of a stay busy fight on Fox Sports Australia versus Christian Soy. And the link is in the show notes to that. It was an interesting little nugget out of this morning's weigh-in, because, of course, Justice Hooney is scheduled to fight in June 19th again already, after this fight against Australian rugby league star Paul Gallen, who just sent Lucas Brown to hell last month in about 90 seconds. Former world champion, air quotes. Right?
Relax.
Yeah. Kind of had a belt. Paul Gallen, and when they went in, Justice Hooney and Christian Soy went into the weigh-in today. Hooney actually came out on Fox Sports and said he was embarrassed because all the signage, all the posters, everything in the hall where they were doing the weigh-in was all for Hooney and Gallen. And these two guys had to weigh in basically and get their pictures taken in front of just a blank curtain because all the signage was for the next fight, which is kind of an interesting little nugget. So that is Wednesday morning. Hooney is definitely one to watch. And then Friday, another show from Australia, Thunderdome 35 by Dragonfire Promotions in Western Australia.
This is obviously wrestling, right?
No, the Thunderdome. This is great because I set you up in the show notes too. Click on the Facebook link. There's a picture of the Thunderdome, and it does look like a Thunderdome, exactly what you described, what you would expect it to look like, which is super cool. And this is basically a Australian club show. Tony Tolge has been running these shows for a while now, and they're really highly entertaining. A couple of neat fights too on the top of the card. One for a pair of regional belts, IBO and WBC, and another one for an Australia West middleweight title. So that show will be good, I think, and entertaining from top to bottom. Really early in the U.S., and I've got it's pay-per-view. I've got the pay-per-view link here in the show notes if you want to watch it. So good stuff. Here are three more things, though, and follow me on Twitter. Pay attention on the Stanza schedule that's in my bio on Twitter, or just follow along in these show notes because I'll have you all set up for the weekend. There's Big Punch Thursday night on pay-per-view in Tijuana. God bless. And then Friday night in Tijuana. Neither of those shows are currently on BoxRec.
Oh boy.
But they'll be great. I can't wait. And then a show that we will definitely be talking about next week. There is finally a big show in Tanzania on Friday, live and free, believe it or not, on Fight TV pay-per-view. I say Fight TV pay-per-view because that platform generally only sells pay-per-views, but this card is listed as free, so you can watch it. It's about 1 p.m. on Friday, U.S. Eastern Daylight Time. Hassan Mwakinyo, who sent our guy from the UK, who actually just fought this weekend, right?
Huh?
Sam Eggington sent Sam Eggington to hell. That was Hassan Mwakinyo's big win of his career to this point.
One of the most enjoyable fights I've ever watched.
Yeah, that was a very exciting fight while it lasted. So he's on the main event, and then a cruiserweight that I really, really love out of Tanzania. He's fought at heavyweight a few times, named Django. He'll be in action. Big, huge guy. He's a pretty good fighter. So that I'm excited about. And then last but not least, for all the boxing hipsters out there, either depending on how you look at it in the U.S., really super late Friday or early into the morning on Saturday from Thailand, we have the minimum weight king knockout CP Freshmart fighting in Thailand. He's 21-0 and a pretty decent opponent.
Few knockouts.
Oh, what a cheap shot! Pretty decent opponent. I'm not familiar with his opponent, but pretty decent record, 23-6-1. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the borders of Thailand are closed. I mean, I think they've shut down Muay Thai altogether. But last I checked, this fight was going forward. So pretty decent opponent considering the circumstances. So
better than his last one too. So
yeah, and he eked out a win in that last one, to be fair. That was a very good fight.
What gave that away? The 120-107 cards?
Yeah, pretty much the cards were already completed before the fight. It's actually a pretty close fight. But big weekend, man. It should be fun. We'll look forward to talking about it next week.
All right, so with that out of the way, let's welcome in our guest for this week. This will be the first interview that we're going to do. I think we're going to do more going forward, assuming that this one goes well. Our guest this week is featured on CBS 2 here in LA. Tim, not for you. You're not here in LA, but for me here in LA. He's the current boxing host for Golden Boy, Thompson Boxing, Elite Boxing. He's also on DAZN. I know him mostly, though, from being part of the bullpen of personalities on ESPN 710 here in LA. And that is Beto Duran. I think you have to. There we go.
There we go. Now, did I accept that right?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I guess I have a lot of jobs, but I don't have one. And I'm excited to be here. I honestly I invited myself onto the show because I finally exchanged numbers with the Tim Boxeo. And I was like, wow. I was like, I want to come on the podcast. I said that being a smartass. And here I am now. So I'm excited to be on. I appreciate you guys.
He called your bluff.
Are you kidding me, Beto? I appreciate you. Thank you for all the support. When you said you wanted to come on and talk about it, I couldn't believe it because I was glued to YouTube this weekend as we had a live boxing event in Tijuana with English broadcasting, which I couldn't have been more excited about it. And then, when we found out, or when you let me know that this card was going down, and I found out it was going to be you delivering it, I was super excited. So we're on the edge of our seats to hear about what we only know from afar, and that is the mecca of boxing.
Yeah, I gotta ask.
Go for it.
When you got there and you were walking into the venue, did any of the promoters ask you, like, hey, are you willing to fight somebody on the undercard?
Anyone under 20, anyone under 18, you're willing to fight.
No, because I weigh 225, so they don't need me there. But if I would have been about 140, there would have been somebody there. I went with Jessica Rosales, who does a great job. She's my partner. Brought her to the game at Golden Boy. We worked together at Thompson. And Jessica is awesome, but she also weighs about 105. So I'm not surprised that, maybe somebody could have asked her, Jessica, you want to get in, make a couple $100 real quick, pick your own opponent. It was amazing / weird / awesome / hard to explain because I was even texting Tim and he's like, I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not. Mind you, I'm in the cab trying to get back across the border when I'm telling him all this going on. He's like, are you being sarcastic? I want to go with the wife. I'm like, no, you got to come. It's just, it's like, okay, my story is I'm a weirdo. I like all that dingy, gringy stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'll be bougie and I'll work a fight in Vegas, but you put me in a club show, that's where I belong. That's why I listened to your podcast. That's why when I ran across Tim Boxeo's Twitter account a year ago, I'm like, dude, this is for me because I'm that guy who will watch anything anywhere. And if I can find a stream, it's great. And Tim Boxeo is doing the Lord's work. And when I found out the other day that Tim Boxeo actually has a real job, it threw me off. I'm not gonna and that threw me off. And so the way it worked is Big Punch Arena is in Tijuana, Mexico, and Elite Boxing Promotions. I know them. They're a company that did their first promotion. They called it Evolution 1 in Tijuana. And the guy who's running it, Carlos, reached out to me a few months ago. It was like, hey, I like what you do on the Thompson boxing stream where you, Doug Fisher, Steve Kim, and Jessica, where you'll read the comments on Facebook or YouTube and you interact with the crowd. And I'm like, when Thompson started this about 3 years ago, I did that as a smart-ass response one night because people were just trashing the show. And finally I said, you know what? I started arguing with the people and then the numbers started going up. And because maybe it was like 4 years ago, we're so used to having the regular traditional broadcast and the streaming is the wild, wild west. Now everybody does it. But a few years ago, nobody was doing that. And I did that because people were like, oh, look at this guy. He sucks. I'm like, why don't you get in the ring? I became that guy, right? And people were like, wait, you're talking to me? I'm like, yeah, where are you guys at? And we started having a conversation. And I even said it, look, if you're watching a Thompson show on a Friday night, you're loaded or you're related to somebody or you're both. It's either one. And being honest, and people were like, really had fun with it. Mr. Thompson and Alex Campanolo said, hey, whatever it is you did, just keep doing it. You're the professional, go for it. So that's what we do on the Thompson shows where we interact with the crowd and we go back and forth. And it's like a little family of people there. They're doing it and it's cool. So Carlos from Elite Boxing said, hey, I want to have the same thing, but use your bilingualism where you can go and speak in Spanish and you can have this back and forth because what Elite is doing is they're taking their boxers that they here in Southern California out of NGBA Boxing in Linwood. they were taking their fighters and turning them pro during the COVID in Mexico. But as you know, when you go down there, sometimes you show up and the opponent that you got isn't the opponent you paid for. Or, hey, you're going to fight at 1 o'clock. Next thing you know, it's 10 o'clock. So they got together and said, why don't we take our fighters, if we have a group of 5 or 6 of them, create our own show, and basically rent out Big Punch Arena. And that's what they did. And they contacted me and said, we want you to do this. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it. But the thing is, a few months before that, when Tim started calling Big Punch a Mecca, I even tweeted you, right, Tim? I was like, oh, one day my goal is to call a fight from Big Punch. Me being a smartass. Because I've called fights in New York. I've called fights in Texas, in Vegas. I've done paper. I've done all this stuff, which has been a great ride. But I'm like, of course, me, I'm going to go and do a fight at Big Punch Arena because, as the kids would say, goals. Well, it came true. Like LeVar Ball, I spoke it into existence. It happened. And it was cool. It was an experience. And the next one is June 26th. I plan on being there. And I know Tim talks about it and back and different forth. And like my thing is when I worked for Golden Boy I'm one of those guys, but like you mentioned my reporting background at ESPN Radio here in Los Angeles, I'd go and do the different stories. And when I started being a boxing play-by-play guy, I'm like, why do I want to know who these guys are? So I started doing the research on these guys and I kept running across BoxRec that these guys were fighting at El Rancho Grande Bar or the billiards place in Tijuana. And I'm like, who are these guys? Like, what is going on? And I'm like, a billiards hall, and now they're fighting at Staples Center. I mean, mind you, they're the first fight of the night, but still, that's what the beauty and that's what intrigues me about boxing is guys like that. Like that's the backbone because they're helping a young Ryan Garcia get across, or like with these young fighters, Navarrete or whoever it is, get to the next stage. And these are the guys that are, they're making it possible. And it was cool to see because you walk in there and maybe a couple hundred people. And there's already fights going on. And these dudes, 4-rounders, are just slugging it out, going back and forth. I'm like, what the hell am I getting into? It felt like clubbish. It felt Von Damme-ish in Bloodsport. It felt like Seinfeld when they're like, there's a cockfight going on. It felt like all that kind of stuff coming together because it's in the middle of the day and like the sun is coming in, but you kind of see the steam from the ring and the smoke. And oh, it's just beautiful.
That's what I was going to ask. Like when you got there, like when you pulled up to the front, did you see like smoke rising from the ground? Could you see the stench of blood and sweat? What was it like from, Curb Appeal wise?
Curb Appeal, it's like, so Jessica Rosales is my partner. Like I told this, I have my own podcast called Living the Dream. I'm like, Jessica, we got to do this on the podcast. She's like, no, but I convinced her to do it. So we got into detail. And Jessica is a pro's pro. She's barely 5 foot, barely 100 pounds, beautiful young lady, very talented, known her for a lot of years. And I was like, Jessica, they're looking for a girl. They want to have a girl do this. You'll be the ring reporter because you're bilingual. There's not many people who can do what you do, Jessica. She's like, okay, all right, I trust you. She's like, I never really been to Mexico. I've been to Cancun for Pepe Gomez shows, which is another story in the world. But she's like, I'll go do it. So the plan was drive down there that day, walk across the border because I didn't want to be stuck at the border for 5 hours driving back, and catch a cab. And I purposely didn't tell Jessica anything about where we were going because I didn't know where we were going. All I know is that I looked up the venue and it said Big Punch. And so you cross the border and it's 15 minutes east of downtown Tijuana. So you're driving along the freeway and you see the border, but you're going farther or farther away. It's like if you're in Los Angeles, you're going east, like if you're going towards Riverside or, you're going away from the city. Like you see the downtown skyline going away and you're like, oh, we're in the nitty gritty. We're in a neighborhood that so of course, when we crossed, I couldn't get the Uber to work. So I finally found a cab driver I trusted and I told him where we're going. And he did they do fights there? That's the club. Oh, and he said something. He's like, but around the corner, there's table dance. And I'm like, no. I don't want table dance. Jessica looks at me like, what did he say? What? And I'm like, no, that's around the corner. And he's like, okay. No, okay. So they figured out that cab driver calls another cab driver and tells him, hey, he said that they're doing fights there. I was like, why would they do fights there? Oh, I'm like, oh my God. Then I'm like, of course, my phone's not working. I'm like, are we really, what are we doing? Get there. And just like the picture shows, Casa de Cumbias, like the house of cumbia music, it's purple. and it's just on a major busy street. You don't know what it is. There's no front door, so we walk up a ramp, and there's a sign that says "Insane Clown tonight, 8:30." Like,
What?
yes, there was like some kind of rave or something going on at 8:30 that night. Like, she looked at me. She said, "Did that say Insane Clown?" I was like, "Jessica, we're fine. Mind you, I'm like, "Oh fudge, what are we doing here? Like, what's going on?" Also, I was just communicating with people. The people who hired me out weren't there. So they're like, "Oh, look for a guy." I'm like, "Okay." We walk into the ramp area. We see a door open, but it's not like a regular door. It's like a big sliding door, like if it was like a warehouse worker pulling his truck in the back. And we see the fights going on. We just walk right in there, and nobody stops us. Nobody. Just we walk right in. There's a ticket booth, but we just kept on walking because that's my thing where I just act like I own the place. And I just kept on walking, walked right past everybody, walked upstairs, and I walked into the locker room. I'm like, "Oh, okay, so this is where we..." Yeah.
So you're in the locker room. I assume that they thought that you were there for a fight, like you were actually going to fight, probably.
And mind you, I have my Tim Boxeo shirt because as soon as we got out of that cab, I was like, "Jessica, you got to take the pictures." I took the Tim Boxeo pictures, and I'm looking for a sign anywhere outside that says Big Punch. There's nothing there. I asked somebody, "Is there a sign that says Big Punch?" No, it's just Big Punch in name only. That venue is used throughout the week for boxing. So promoters there rent out the venue. It's already set up. Like the 2 different rooms are locker rooms. The DJ is already set up. The lighting system is set up. The ramp is all set up. So everything is fine and it's in place. Certain nights on weekends, they convert it into a club. Like, Insane Clown, for example. And it's the booths there are like if you're getting table service at a nightclub. So that's what it kind of is. The ring is on the dance floor where the fighters come in from. That stage is really the stage where somebody's performing, like a musical act would be performing. So that's what it is. That's what I learned. And it was fantastic. It was fun. It was cool. It was the epitome of a club show. And the fights were good. The fights were fun. And it was cool. Like I kept sending Tim pictures of, what's in the background. Like, what did I find? Like a MMA amateur, a jiu-jitsu amateur or something, like Muay Thai amateur bout sheet from like
Muay Thai
that's still on the wall, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's so great. I'm thoroughly disappointed that there's nothing on the outside that says Big Punch. This is the worst news of the day.
Yeah, me too. I was walking around looking for pictures. I was like, something.
Wait, did the people who like own it know that it's called Big Punch?
No. Okay, so I started asking questions, right? Me, the way I am. So Pablo Flores, who's the ring announcer, he's done some stuff for Golden Boy. He lives in Tijuana. And I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh my God, you're here." And like some of the people came up and they're like, "Oh, you're Beto and Jessica. Oh my God, can we get a picture?" Like we were celebrities there, Tim. It was awesome because they're, social media, everybody knows you now. And it's like, "Oh," one guy's like, "Oh, you're the one who interviews Canelo for DAZN." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." But then I realized I'm the only Mexican that does stuff for DAZN. So yeah, I guess that's me. And it's like, it was cool. Like it was cool. And like, hardcore fans and they're getting after it. But I asked them, I'm like, "So what goes on here?" And they're like, "We just have fights." I'm like, "Okay, who owns it?" Then I realized I shouldn't be asking questions in Mexico because the look I got from one person was like, "Who owns it, huh?" I'm like, "Why are you asking all these questions? Like, you shouldn't be like, hey, forget your reporting background. There's no less is more. You don't need to know."
So go on, Tim.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you mentioned calling it the Mecca of boxing, and I call it that only partly tongue in cheek because when you look at the big picture, like you said, they have Big Punch, like we just talked about here before you jumped on. Big Punch has cards Thursday and Friday this week. They do anywhere from 15 to 20 shows a month. And I think you'd be hard pressed anywhere in the world to find a venue that's as busy as Big Punch with boxing.
Yeah. It's I know that there's fights going on every single weekend, and it's a well-oiled machine. People come on. So this is the beauty of what we did. So this promotion company had 7 fights total on their card. But what I found out is, hey, another promoter might have only 3 guys that they can fight that day. So, hey, let me latch on to your show. So there's multiple promoters working together. So what they do is, say Tim Boxeo Productions is going to put on 7 fights. I have enough time for 10. He'll sell the other 3 spots to, Boxeo Tim Production. So they're selling spots back and forth. So it's not just one promotion all the time. It'll be like, this spot right here, I can give you the opening bout, I can give you the walkout, like something like that. And that's how promoters make money, where, hey, I'm going to rent the space tonight and I'll sell 4 spots. And then that saves a certain promoter having to find everything going on, and the medicals, everything else. So it's interesting, the business world of what I was hearing. So it was very, very interesting, eye-opening. And at the end of the day, a lot of respect for anybody who gets in the ring. But when you're going and you're fighting there, especially these United States fighters where you're going there for a reason. And there was a couple kids from Stockton that had quick knockouts. And I'm like, what are you doing here? You're knocking the guy out in 20 seconds. How's this really helping you going across? But then, as one guy told me, he goes, I can't get fights in the United States right now. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you're, like our hero Lovejoy. You build up your record and you get going and you get out of there. A lot of guys have started their careers in Mexico, but what they do in Big Punch and everywhere else, it's, I know Rosarito was doing stuff. So I'm not one guy to ever think that I'm too good for anywhere. And I respect people that are going to go and do that. It was an awesome experience, and it was fun. And it's like, you know what? It was cool. Like when the DJ came on, because it was a 15-minute break, I don't know why. They just decided to have a 15-minute intermission. And the DJ just started blasting the music and the smoke and the light show. Oh, I recorded that, and I had the Tim Boxeo shirt out there. I posted that right away. I wanted Tim Boxeo to feel like he was there.
I did, Beto. Thank you so much, man. This is the best. Angela, I cut you off. You have another question? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm hogging it, man. You can hear my excitement of going. Like, I've worked Canelo fights at Cowboy Stadium, Canelo fights in Vegas, like Barkley. But I still get excited for this, and just being a Big Punch, it was cool. And then you get done and you walk out and the sun is still out, and you're like, what just happened here? Like,
wait, the sun was still out? What time did the show start?
5.
5? And it was over in 3 hours? I mean,
remember, Insane Clown was at 8:30.
What did they do with the ring?
They take it down right away and they put it away.
Was it on rollers?
Hey man, once again, don't ask any questions, because as soon as the last fight, they were like, okay, we're taking it down. Insane Clowns at 8:30, and there was people outside. There's a big punk scene in Tijuana, so they were ready for it, man. It was cool. And then, like I said, it's just I felt like Tim Boxeo and the podcast was there with me, because I'm looking for the new female commissioner that you guys talked about.
Yeah.
I'm like looking around. Okay, is she here? I'm looking at all the different stuff you guys talked about, and now I see why there's issues streaming, because Elite had ordered a certain service to make sure that there was strong Wi-Fi connected, but it didn't get delivered that day. So it went from being, we're gonna have a strong service, to all of a sudden we're only gonna have somebody's hotspot. So I felt bad for our crew that had to get it going, but they made it happen. And they had graphics, they had promotion, they had sponsors, all that good stuff. And I had a headset, and yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, it was really. There's a few rough spots, like you said, on the internet, but towards the end, it really started to kind of smooth itself out. Hey, what about, the biggest question? One of the biggest questions I think everyone has on their mind is, did you feel safe in Tijuana at Big Punch?
Yeah, and I'm going with Jessica, who is super nice, but she's also said, hey, we've gone to Cancun, we've gone to Puerto Rico. I've never gone to TJ to party, being an LA person, but and I'm not saying this, I'm trying to sell or anything like that. I did feel safe, because we walked across the border, jumped in the cab, went straight to Big Punch. Now, mind you, it's the same adage: if don't start none, won't be none. Like, don't go looking for trouble and you'll be all right. So we went to the venue. It was cool. It was fun. And we're outside getting a couple tacos. I'm like, we're all right. But I could tell, like, if you would have wandered a couple blocks away, maybe a different area, it's not exactly the safest area. But then again, what are you looking for that in that area anyways, But the fight venue was cool. The bartenders coming up to you, offering you whatever you need, food coming at you. It was the environment felt like any other boxing environment, and it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. And I would not be going back on the 26th if I didn't feel right. Like, I was gonna say, like, look, I might be Mexican, I might be, able to speak Spanish, but I'm still a LA kid, and I'm like Latino. You got to be like, that they know you're not from there. But as soon as the fight's over, jump right back in the cab. When walked right back across the border. Everything is perfectly fine. And actually, for the 26th, I'm actually going to stay in Tijuana for the night. So I'll stay, but I'm going to stay in downtown, like at one of the nicer hotels and like the good food scene and everything else around there. At the Grand Hotel. I know they do fights at the Grand Hotel.
That's the one you're going to stay at?
Mm-hmm. You have bad experience at the Grand?
No, I've been there only one time, and I did not go to Big Punch. I did not have any experience like that. You were smart to walk across because I drove, and oh boy,
yeah,
that's.
It's
can you explain to anybody who's never driven there what it's like to drive back into America?
Okay, so because of the Trump administration, the restrictions to get back into the United States were even harder at the border. So there were less Border Patrol agents working, and that means there were less lanes. So it's starting to open up a little bit more, but you were looking at a 4 to 6 hour minimum wait to cross the border car. And all it is just they look at your car, passport, all right, cool, come across. But sometimes there was like maybe 2 lanes open. So there's a couple more from what the taxi driver said at one of the spots where we're at. He's like, right now, 9 o'clock, it's a 3 hour crossover. But we walk across, you park your car at the Jack in the Box at the border, pay $25 for the parking all day. You walk across, they see your passport, let's go. And on the way back, you walk back. And if you have a U.S. passport, there's no line. You just walk right in, boom, we're back. And it's the walking is the best. But yeah, it's a 4 to 6 hour wait in your car right now.
Yeah, think of the worst possible like toll booth you can imagine. I went probably like 10 years ago, and it was like 3 hours, and it was just such a nightmare. You're just sitting there in your car waiting.
You probably went on a holiday weekend, right?
It was, I can't remember. It was just like an unassuming Saturday, I think.
Yeah, it's rough. Cool, man. So yeah, it's the Ubers are safe. So I have no problem going back again. It'll be fun. It's an experience. And I heard you were at Dignity. Now I know that you're an LA guy, even better. So we got to get together for a fight.
Yeah, I was there. I think I'm gonna go this Saturday for the Donaire card. Seems to be tickets still available.
Yeah. Plenty.
So I think I might go down over there. Did any of the fights stick out to you?
Okay, so the main event was a kid named Japheth Lee Lamido, Filipino kid from Norwalk, California. He was tested for the first time where the guy went the distance with him. He spars with Leo Santa Cruz a lot. He's 21 years old. Obviously, Filipino, you're going to make the Pacquiao comparison, right? But he's a LA-born kid, real nice. And I talked to him, and he said he turned pro because of COVID in Mexico, but he's been sparring in the Southern California area a lot. So I've heard his name. So everybody calls him Japheth Lee, but his real name is Japheth Lamido. He said Japheth Lee is just what everybody calls him. Lee is actually his first name, so go figure. But he said he's going to make his U.S. debut for his next fight. He said he thinks he's done with the big punch in the Mexico scene. So he's going to be, he says, talking to different promoters. But I like him, 126, went 6 rounds for the first time. Really, I like his way he moves around. So Japheth Lee Lamido. And then there's 2 kids that are coming out of Stockton. Their fights were quick over in the first round, but I was watching them warm up right next to me, of course. And the way that they move around, the way they snap their punches, their jabs, I like that. One of them is a kid called Kenny Lopez Jr. I guess his dad was a pro for a lot of years in the Sacramento area. And I like the way that he moved in his presence. So Kenny Lopez Jr. And then there's another kid also from Stockton, and I don't know his name. I forget because he knocked the guy out in 20 seconds. But his last name is Madera. And he has the look, like the muscles, the chiseled, all that other stuff. He fought at 168. So those are the kids that stood out to me. I like the way, there's some guys where you look at it and you're like, oh, okay. But and I remember telling somebody from Golden Boy today, I was like, dude, I saw these 2 kids that were on the Big Punch shows. They're really, really good. 4-rounders, 6-rounders, maybe somebody you can use in an opponent. And right they said, they don't have a visa, so we can't bring them over. It's like, oh, I'm over here trying to be a matchmaker. But I forget that. You got to have the work visa.
Wait, but if they're Americans going to...
No, the 3 kids that I saw that were the Mexican fighters. From
the Mexican fighters. Okay.
That would be great. But yeah, the Kenny Lopez, I like him. And he's from, where's he at? Yeah, he's from Stockton. Kenny, and his Instagram is Kenny Lowpez, like Lopez. So
And it's Hector Madera. You were thinking
Hector
of
Madera. That's the kid. I like him too.
Yep.
Yep. Big punch. Once again, guys didn't do much first round knockouts, but the Madera kid has that look. Like he's all chiseled, rocked up. I'm like, they purposely told Jessica Rosales to interview him in Spanish because they want to start building his Spanish audience, even though he's a kid from Stockton. So it was pretty cool. So they got a plan for those guys.
And are they aligned with anybody at this point?
No. But I do know that they're part of that Stockton area with Nate Diaz and a club guy named Alan Sanchez. Remember that guy? So they're in that area where they work together. So they're not aligned with anybody, but they both said that they're going to be back on the 26th. It's hard to tell what somebody does in 20 seconds when you're knocking out a 35-year-old man. But the way that they were warming up, I'm like, oh, okay, this doesn't look like somebody who's just going through the motions here.
Were there any fights where you think maybe it was like, okay, this is kind of bad what we're watching here?
No.
Alejandro's doing a good job then.
I was expecting that. I really was, because so my role at Golden Boy and also for the Zone, I work the undercard fights. So when people start making fun of like the YouTubers, all that, I'm like, dude, I've seen worse guys making pro debuts. You know, I've seen some guys that are here 0-1. You're like, how did that guy get licensed? But I was expecting some of that. I didn't see any of that. I saw 8 different fights, and I saw fights that were evenly matched. So maybe your girl in Tijuana is really doing a good job, because I was expecting some crazy, weird blowouts. We got that with Madera and Lopez, where they knocked the guys out. But that's just because the talent level is just completely different. But it wasn't like any of that. What are they doing here? So I think she's doing a good job cleaning it up.
Well, I got to ask this for Tim. I don't know if Tim's going to ask this, but were there any heavyweights?
No.
See.
Yeah. Okay.
Tim?
Because we're kindred spirit here. Because I wanted to see a heavyweight that's like, 270 and 5'8". I wanted
that's what I was going to say.
Like in football, the fat man touchdown. I love that stuff. I wanted to see a 5'8", 275, like that was 9-12 kind of guy against a 6'5" Adonis. I love that guy. Like there's a cruiserweight heavyweight in Mexicali named Miguel Cubos. That's my guy right there. He comes in, he just makes it all ugly for everybody else. But unfortunately, I did not see any of that. Maybe I'll put in a request for the next show.
I'm sure Alejandro's gonna be like, oh yeah, sure, right this way. Tim, did you want to get a question in?
We have Whoop That Ass Promotions coming back to Big Punch, and believe me when I tell you that we've got some 270-pound, 5'5" heavyweights coming up here within the next week.
Okay. I'm so glad you brought that up. So
actually, you know what? I think that's Thursday night's pay-per-view at Big Punch, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, Beto, you'd love to do this if you haven't. Maybe you have already, but another really exciting thing to do, and I guess this will be my closing comment, but is go into BoxRec and change the from under ratings, change it to heavyweights, and then just change it to Mexico. And just start scrolling through the Mexican heavyweights that are listed in BoxRec. I mean, it is an exercise that you will never forget. It's fantastic.
Tim, I already waste a lot of time doing stupid things, and I thank you. I really do thank you. Like, people are like, man, you're always busy. You have all these jobs. Like, not really. I'm over there looking up stupid stuff on BoxRec of like what happened here, and it's all thanks to Tim Boxeo, because he'll put a guy from Slovenia against a guy that used to be a lumberjack in West Virginia, and I'm all about it. But I will say this: I walk into the arena at Big Punch, and we have like a half hour to go before the elite show starts. Remember, I told you they sold the first 3 spots, and I see a dude, all white shirt, white sweatpants, white shoes, clean white shoes, Kangol hat, and I'm like, no, like it can't be. Like it's Repo Rick. I was ready. Yeah. The guy turns around, and I'm like, nah, that's not Repo Rick. I was like, it was the Mexican Repo Rick though. I was like, that's him right there. There's no way, because Repo Rick, when you brought him up, I started working boxing in 2013 and 14 is when I really got into it. And Paulie Maldonado was my first partner when we did the Golden Boy shows on Fox Sports 1. And one of the shows early on, we were at the Hard Rock Hotel doing a show. And this dude walks up to Paulie, and he's just like selling Paulie this, blah, 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 blah. And Paulie, and I don't know Paulie Malignaggi yet, and he's just working with him. I'm thinking, this is like that Brooklyn connection going back and forth. And I'm just like, having my cocktail just sitting there. And Paulie's like, you don't know Repo Rick? I'm like, nah. And the guy turns around, hey, man, I'm MFing Repo Rick. You better know. Puts his hands out like that. I'm like, and Paulie's like, oh, he's new to the game. It don't matter if he's new to the game. I'm Repo Rick. If you're going to be doing a fight in Vegas, you better know Repo Rick, because Repo Rick does it all, right? He gives me the whole spiel, right? And I'm like, he walks away. I'm like, Paulie, what was that? He goes, oh, Repo Rick. He's in the corner of every loser. So
Repo Rick's a hustler.
Always, and then sure enough, anytime I saw, it's like when you see Sean Gibbons in a corner of a Mexican or Filipino, you're like, okay, that guy's gonna win. You see Repo Rick, you're like, yeah. And then he disappeared. And then I hear him on your podcast with Whip That Ass Promotions, and I went on there. And Tim, I swear to you, I've never met you. I don't know anything about you, man, but we're the same, because I went on the website trying to buy a Repo Rick shirt. Merch.
Yeah.
He has a website?
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Whip That Ass Promotion.
No, he doesn't. Yep. He says he sells them at the show. So
or his Instagram or something, whatever it was. He has some kind of link
Yep.
to buy stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my
His
God.
Instagram links to a website that does not exist, which is fantastic.
Yeah, like I was like, I need to have that shirt. But yeah, Kango, you better know. I'm like, who is this person? What am I doing? Like the day before, I'm interviewing Kobe and Phil Jackson. The next day, I have Repo Rick like telling me, you better know me.
It's great.
I love it.
All right. Is there anything else, Tim?
No, Beto, thank you so much for joining us and sharing these stories. This has been fantastic. It's just so everyone knows, in the show notes too, I've got all three of Beto's podcast listed there, Twitter, Instagram. So I just listened to you and Jessica's conversation earlier today about this same topic. So if you want to hear more about Big Punch and hear Jessica and Beto go back and forth, it was a good, really good listen. So
Yeah,
thanks for coming on, man.
As Jessica said, you got me into this boxing world because when Golden Boy was looking for a ring reporter for that stuff, they wanted a female, and I'm like, Jessica's the perfect one. Great reporter, Latina, bilingual. So she's like, one of our first fights, we were in Puerto Rico. Then we go to Cancun. What are you doing now? Where's my career that I'm hanging out with you in Mexico, crossing the border with you? What is going on in my life? It's one of those, like, what do you do? It felt like an episode of Curb.
I mean, when you say I've done it all, I mean, this is a box you've got to check.
Oh, and some people might say,
100%.
no, I'm too good for that. I don't want to do that. I'm more of like, give me that. I can't have enough of this.
So the 3 podcasts: Thursday Diaz, Living the Dream, Let's Go Rick Rowe. How you do 3 podcasts?
Because I don't have one full-time job, so I do it. So yeah, so the Living the Dream is my main podcast. I ask people like, hey, they've got it. Like, what are you doing? Because when ESPN Radio let me go 5 years ago, I was able to do it. It's just I interview interesting people. Like, hey, how did you get to be successful? There it is. That's called Living the Dream. The Let's
Great
Go Rick Rowe, the
concept.
baseball podcast that I do on Tuesdays with a couple former Major League players. But the fun one is Thursday. It's called Thursday Diaz. Coach Joel Diaz and Roberto Diaz, Golden Boy Matchmaker. We do it live on my YouTube page, Beto Duran, on Thursdays. It started during the pandemic because I wanted to teach myself how to use the news program. And I knew Coach will talk a lot. And sure enough, so every Thursday we have a little community. We drink tequila, we drink wine, whatever it is. And we don't talk about what's going on. We don't do breakdown of fights like, hey, what do you think about this? All that hypothetical boxing stuff that I don't pay attention to. Like I even said it, there's a lot of boxing podcasts. They do a great job, but they're not for me because I don't care about breaking down Haney Leonidas or anything like that. I'd rather hear the stories of the characters. And Joel Diaz, if you could tell, he's been around a lot of characters. He tells great stories. Roberto Diaz tells great stories. And we do it live Thursdays at 8:30 on my YouTube page. And because I have a program where the people can leave comments and interact with us, so we do it with them. And people have been like, hey, can we get my fighter on? I'm like, no, I don't want to have any fighters on. I just want to have storytelling, and that's it. No agendas. And it's a lot of fun. So that's Thursdays. And it's on iTunes and all that other good stuff.
I'd love to hear a recap of you bringing them down to a Big Punch and see what they got to say about that.
So Tonio Diaz, Joel's brother, he's become a character. Great guy, great character. And he told the story last week when I told him, like, I'm going to go to a Big Punch. So Toño, I'll let him come on the show for like 5 minutes because he has like a little fan club. And he's like, "Beto, let me tell you about the time I went down to Mexico. I didn't have to weigh in. I didn't do medicals. I showed up. They paid me $20,000 cash, and then that was it." And I'm like, "Wait, did you fight?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I knocked the guy in the first round, but they gave me an envelope of $20,000. I won't walk back across the border." He's like, "But it's not on my box rec." I'm like, what? Like, so he's explaining this to me.
I'm gonna hit the gym.
So those are the kind of stories that we hear on Thursday of like the adventures, and like Joel talks about the Uzbek guys that he's got going. Roberto talks about matchmaking and his time with Barrera and Morales, and it's a great. It's like listening to your Mexican uncles in the backyard with a carne asada. That's what Thursday is about.
And then your Twitter, Duran Sports, your Instagram, Beto Vision.
Yeah, Duran Sports is my Twitter. It's professional. It's kind of boring. That's where I do the work. Instagram is Beto Vision. That's where I show on fights or me messing around playing golf. It's like, I've been in this business 20 years, as you mentioned, at ESPN Radio. I've done a lot of stuff, and like working in boxing is fun. I've always been a boxing fan, being Mexican and working in it. And you see the behind the scenes. It's so cool. And like the first fight I worked was like a club show at Club Nokia that Golden Boy was doing in early, like a decade ago. And I was like, dude, this is amazing. My first fight I ever worked was Paulie Malignaggi, Zab Judah, on the international broadcast. It was my first audition. My first Mexican fight was Canelo against Perro Angulo. And I'm like sitting ringside. I'm like, what the F is this dude from Carson doing here ringside announcing? Mind you, it's an international broadcast, so nobody heard me. But still, I'm there. And it's been a fun ride. I've worked a lot of sports. I've worked every single major event. And it doesn't matter what, or anytime you're at a fight and you're sitting ringside, it's awesome. Whether it's 20,000 people or it's 5,000 at Omega Products in Corona with Thompson or Big Punch. It's just, I still have that enthusiasm that, it keeps me going. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. My memory of you is that listening to like Max and Marcellus or Mason in Ireland, and then Beto coming on doing the little news break segments, reading off the news and stuff.
Yeah. That was me. So for 10 years, I did every Laker, Dodger, Angel, Clipper, USC, UCLA. That was my thing. That was my beat going on. And then I saw the writing on the wall where, they're going to start eliminating that because Twitter comes on, social media. You don't need all that information from the radio when it's on your phone already. And I was doing more play-by-play. The boxing took off, and here I am.
I remember seeing you on a Golden Boy broadcast. And I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
First Max, now Beto? What's going on here?
The one thing I learned early was I could deal with Laker fans that hate me. I could deal with Dodger fans that hate me. But I learned early, don't engage boxing fans. Oh my goodness. There is no reasoning with them. There is just none at all. And I love them for it.
Oh, man. Well, Beto, thank you so much for coming on and telling the tale of Big Punch. I can't wait. And I know you probably feel the same way. I cannot wait for this conversation to go down where Tim has made the journey.
This is like, Tim, are you really seriously going to tell your wife to go to Big Punch Arena?
Yeah, my wife.
For their anniversary.
Absolutely. Yeah, my wife.
Not your anniversary.
My wife is just as into it as I am. She wants to go 100%, and she's the Spanish-speaking one of the two of us. So I need her as, she's got to be the wingman anyway.
No, everybody speaks Spanish inside Big Punch. That's another thing that throw me off. Everybody's speaking English. Like what? So Tim, great for you. Hopefully I'm there with you. And oh my goodness, Tim Boxeo. Like just even taking the T-shirt to Big Punch Arena, I felt happy.
Oh man, you're too kind, dude. That's so awesome. Thank you very much.
No problem. And continue success on the podcast. I listen every single week, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Definitely
appreciate that. All right, that is Beto Duran. He is out of here. The man. Tim, any final words?
No, it was great having Beto on. Thanks, Angelo. Big weekend ahead. Let's get it.
Yeah. So thank you so much to everybody who listened. If you like this podcast, here's what you do. You share it. You leave good ratings. You give it a good review. And just share it. And then also go follow Tim Boxeo on Twitter. Hit the bio where you see all the links, or a link. You can see the link that takes you to a link with a bunch of links. So you can see Tim's calendar. You could see the Tim Boxeo store if you want to get a T-shirt and take it to Big Punch or whatever your club venue is. And I think I don't know, Tim, as the podcast evolves, I think one of the things is support your club boxing. Take the Tim Boxeo shirt, post your pictures on social media. I think that's kind of cool. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for listening. We will be back next week with yet another episode of the Tim Boxeo Show.